fascinating product that is used in many ways. People use it to ferment things such as dough. When it is put into the dough, it causes a reaction to the sugars, which causes gas bubbles to form. This chemical reaction causes the bread to expand and be fluffier when cooked. While yeast can be used in a good way, it can also be used to ferment beer. In the Bible, yeast is used metaphorically for its ability to affect whatever it is put into. Matthew 16, verse 6. Then Jesus said to them, "Take heed and beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and the Sadducees." And they reasoned among themselves, saying, "It is because we have taken no bread." But Jesus, being aware of it, said to them, "O you of little faith, why do you reason among yourselves because you have brought no bread? Do you not yet understand or remember the 5 loaves of the 5,000 and how many baskets you took up? Nor the 7 loaves of the 4,000 and how many large baskets you took up? How is it that you do not understand that I did not speak to you concerning bread, but to beware of the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees?" Then they understood that he did not tell them to beware of the leaven of bread, but of the doctrine of the Pharisees and Sadducees. At first, Jesus' disciples were confused about what Jesus was talking about. They thought he was upset with them for not bringing bread. But they finally understood the message. Jesus was talking about the teaching of the Pharisees and Sadducees. While they knew what the law of Moses taught, they had added numerous man-made teachings to the law, and they would bind these on other people. Jesus is teaching his disciples and us that if we listen long enough to false doctrine, it will get into our hearts like yeast in bread. It is a slow process, but eventually that yeast will work its way throughout our hearts and change us. We must never underestimate the power of false doctrine and the effects that it can have in our lives. Even spiritually mature Christians are warned to watch out for outside influences when they try to rescue a sinner whose heart has already been fermented by the false way. Galatians 6, verse number 1. "Brethren, if a man is overtaken in any trespass, you who are spiritual, restore such a one in a spirit of gentleness, considering yourself, lest you also be tempted." Every day, the world does its best to get into our hearts. The more we get involved with worldly things, the more yeast is being put into our hearts. Just as Jesus warned his disciples about the leaven of the Pharisees and Sadducees, we must also beware of the leaven of the world. While we cannot take ourselves out of the world, we can make sure to fortify our hearts by filling ourselves with God's truth every day and by praying for strength. We must not let our guard down for a second. Some people like to think they can continue hanging around their old friends they ran around with before they became Christians. However, there's a real danger in doing this because your old worldly friends have not changed their ways, which is why Paul said in 1 Corinthians 15, verse 33, "Do not be deceived. Evil company corrupts good habits." Now, I'm not suggesting that you completely abandon your worldly friends, but I am suggesting that you be careful about what you do with these friends. While on one hand, you should use your friendship and your example to lead people to Christ, on the other hand, this does not mean that you should engage in sinful things in order to keep them as your friends. I know it can be challenging to not do the same things you used to when you spent all that time with your worldly friends, but you must never forget who you have given your life over to and what you stand for now. Many times this will cause us to lose some of those friends, as Peter said in 1 Peter 4, verse number 3. "For we have spent enough of our past lifetime in doing the will of the Gentiles, when we walked in lewdness, lust, drunkenness, revelries, drinking parties, and abominable idolatries. In regard to these, they think it strange that you do not run with them in the same flood of dissipation, speaking evil of you. They will give an account to him who is ready to judge the living and the dead." While living the Christian life can be hard, let us continue to beware of the leaven of all things that oppose God's truth, even if it means losing a few worldly friends.